previous months, Harry had been preparing for the Invictus Games being held in The Hague in April 2022. His involvement would be featured in a Netflix series. In successive Netflix episodes, the Sussexes would feature as members of the royal family. Visibly retaining their relationship with the Queen was critically important for the Sussexes' status and income. Well, they have used the Queen so repeatedly in everything that they have done. Either for or against her, they will say whatever needs to be done in order to continue to progress their own narrative. They're disgusting. And the desperation which they go through life trying to find enough footage for these Netflix episodes, I'm gonna be honest with you, like, what Netflix episodes? Like, are we talking about that documentary that they made? Which I never watched. Honestly, I never watched it. I just saw the clips of her pretending to bow. Like, is that what the Netflix thing was? Is that all it was going to be? Because that was like, I never watched it. I watched several reviews of it, and it just seemed like it was disappointing. I feel like it really fell flat. I think that there were some people that I remember hearing some people who I thought, you should know better, really buying into the idea that Meghan had experienced profound racism in England. So I think maybe it helped a few people. But again, because Meghan and Harry can't shut up and can't stop doing stupid things like running around New York and claiming to everybody that they were being hounded by paparazzi and almost driven to their deaths, because they won't stop doing things like that, the wins that they have over the public and over deceiving the public, they lose immediately. Anyway, as they're trolling their own lives for content for their Netflix episodes, at the same time, around March 2022, the ailing 95-year-old monarch had repeatedly canceled public engagements. The exception was her appearance at Prince Philip's memorial service. To the royal family's misfortune, the event was overshadowed by Andrew's bold appearance center stage, escorting his mother to her seat in Westminster Abbey. Defiantly ignoring his banishment from public duties, Andrew also indicated that he expected to appear in the spotlight during the Queen's Jubilee celebrations in June. Yeah, I mean, I would say that the public image of the royal family at this time was truly hanging in the balance, which is why it's so sad that Harry was part of the reason why things were going so badly for the Queen. She's so old, and she was so sick. And it just seems like if he had problems, like, why was he making the last years of his grandmother's life so terrible? But Andrew's over there doing his own thing, bitter about the fact that he's had all of his honor stripped from him and all of this, yet it was all as a reflection of his own choices. Harry's over there bitter, selfishly saying, I will have my say, everyone has to stop and listen to me. Both Andrew and Harry made the bed, but refused to lie in it, and they want everyone to feel sorry for them. We don't feel sorry for either one of you. Keeping Andrew out of sight was one problem. Another was Harry and Meghan's demand also to appear with the Queen on Buckingham Palace's balcony. Why they thought that they were going to have this privilege? They said they didn't want it. They said they didn't want their son to be called a prince. They said that they themselves didn't want these honors any longer. They said they wanted to be private citizens. Yet when they are given those very things that they said they wanted, now it's a great big slight. Well, why can't we be on the balcony? I've always been on the balcony. Because you said you didn't want to be. Okay, so why don't you sit down? If the three outcasts did successfully appear in the spotlight, the media's focus would no longer be on the Queen's achievements over 70 years, but on her dysfunctional son and grandson. Inevitably, the public reaction would be unenthusiastic. Why couldn't those two, and really those three, have imagined that it actually wasn't about them? Why couldn't they have thought, how can we best highlight and spotlight all the things that Granny has been up to, or that Mother has been doing? It's just like, have a little care and respect for the occasion. It's got nothing to do with you, whether you come or don't come, whether you stand on the balcony or don't stand on the balcony. We're trying to recognize somebody's 70 years of public service and selflessness. How could you even begin to expect that you should be highlighted in any way when the whole reason we're having this great big national shindig is to celebrate somebody who's given 70 years of their life? The obstacles for Harry and Meghan to appear center stage were considerable, not least because their presence was opposed by Charles. Charles preferred that the Sussexes, as private citizens, were not invited on the balcony or to ride in the royal carriage. Instead, they would be confined to the VIP enclosures. In Meghan's view, those optics were unsatisfactory, partly because her value to Netflix was to stand near the Queen. The thing is, though, Meghan, you had the choice to stand near the Queen and you threw it away. So if you wanted that, if that was what was important to you, you would have kept it. What's important to you is that almighty dollar, right? And you can't make the Netflix documentary as long as you were with the Queen. Unfortunately for you, there are some boundaries in this world. You can't have both. And you can't be embittered because you can't have both. And I have no idea what in the world she's thinking by just using the Queen like this for a Netflix show. Do we hear that? She wants to use somebody's existence, not even just the Queen, okay? Like, that's in and of itself. I'm just talking about the human dignity of another human being. She wants to use that person's humanity so that she can go and like make a little show. All right? People aren't even going to remember that show in 5 years. But she wants to use somebody for that. Now let's layer on top of that. She wants to use the Queen, who has served selflessly for 70 years, to prop up her own crippled life. Meghan, you disgust me. To achieve this goal, Harry badgered the Queen's resistant advisors. When this failed, he asked the Queen if he could visit her in Windsor on his way to the Netherlands. To secure her agreement, Harry appeared to give the impression that the meeting would offer an olive branch or to clear the air. At the last moment, keen to see her grandson and instinctively forgiving of Meghan, the Queen agreed to meet the couple on the 14th of April. Y'all, I'm never in the mood to criticize the Queen. I think that she is grace and dignity itself. But I do have to say that she does seem to have a blind spot for the people that she loves. I think that she gives in to the people she loves because she wasn't able to always give the time that she would have liked to give, so she gives what she can. I think she gives understanding when the situation is not understandable. I think she offers forgiveness when she needs to use discretion, and she can forgive these people all she wants, but she doesn't need to mix and mingle with them. I think she gives Harry way too much influence on what she does. I think she gives him too many passes. I think she did this for all of her kids. And I think that it's easy to do that when you feel like, I haven't been able to give time, so I'll give what I can. And I wish that she wouldn't have burdened her conscience with caring what Meghan and Harry were doing and refused to see them. But of course, Harry's going to say, I just want to make things right, Granny. I just want to make things right. And of course, peace always sounds good. But peace at the expense of honesty is never peace. If you have to bury honesty in order to gain peace, I wonder how long-lasting that peace will be. Charles was suspicious. Well, William avoided the problem altogether and went skiing with his family in France. After spending the night with his cousin Eugenie, Harry and Meghan were driven to Windsor Castle. Some would say that on the way, they were seen walking through the sunlit park to allow Netflix to record their, quote, journey. On the Queen's insistence, they met Charles and Camilla before her. Well, that was wise. The Sussexes arrived late. Tacky. Their first encounter was civilized, but failed to resolve the fraught relationships created by the Oprah Winfrey interview. Can you imagine if you were Camilla having to meet those two snakes who had all but stabbed you with a bayonet just to make a point? By contrast, there was no tension drinking tea with the Queen, yet the issue of their appearance on the balcony remained unresolved. Their visit was leaked to the Sun after they arrived in the Netherlands on the same day. The danger of allowing the meeting surfaced 6 days later. Now, who leaked this, I ask myself? Could it be one Meghan Markle? I mean, who's leaking these things to the Sun? Who would have cared that she met with them except Meghan Markle, wanting everybody to know, we still have an in with the Queen? You all might think there's tension, but there's really not. Of course, you would have realized there wasn't tension after we used the name Lilibet. You would have understood that we're actually great pals with the Queen. But we also take tea with her when we're in town. That's the only person who would have leaked that story is Meghan. Harry claimed to everybody that he and the Queen had a special relationship. He told the world this. And his special relationship with the Queen, he told the world, meant that the Queen confided in him secrets unknown to others of her family. Her 4 children and 7 other grandchildren, he implied, were excluded from her confidence. More inflammatory, he declared, his duty was to make sure his grandmother was protected and got the right people around her. Charles, Anne, William, and all the Queen's staff, suggested Harry, were inadequate for the task. He appeared to speak from the heart, not as a thoughtless man totally manipulated by his wife. Harry, like Meghan, had resumed the war against his family. The Olive Branch media headline about his visit to Windsor splintered. Classic Tom Bauer. He says one thing, and then in the very next sentence says something that seems to oppose what he just said. So he says Harry wasn't being thoughtless, but then saying that the Olive Branch has been splintered because they're resuming their war against the family. I don't know. Maybe he means that Harry is naive enough to believe that the Queen actually liked him best. I think that Harry desperately believes that. Also because the press at various times has reported this member or that member as having a special relationship with the Queen. So Harry obviously would have picked out what the press said about his relationship with the Queen and held dearly to it. Much of what Harry seems to know about his life is what others have written about it. And you saw that a lot in Spare. I would say that half the book to 3/4 of the book were rebuttals about what other people had said about his life, or even support for what had happened in his life based on what others had written. He seems to bear very little understanding on how to correlate and understand and exist with his own experiences and his own perception of his experiences. It's very odd how much he relies on what others have said about his life. So it would not surprise me if he really believed he and the Queen had some special bond because others had said that of him. And maybe he really, like I said, maybe there is a naive part of him that believes the Queen and he have a special relationship. But I think what questions fall from that for me is, Harry, if you really believe that you are one of the only people able to give the Queen good advice and that she's surrounded by these nefarious and evil doers, why would you not have stayed near to protect her? Why would you have run when you knew she needed you? So even in that, I don't understand. I don't understand him. Predictably, Harry's assertions of his special status aroused accusations about his breathtaking arrogance, with, quote, no bounds to his self-delusion. Responding to the public fury, Downing Street even issued a statement that the Queen was well protected. Clearly unwilling to limit the damage, the most wounded moment of his TV appearance was his refusal to answer whether he missed his brother and dad. Ignoring his family, he knew, would be offset among most American viewers by warmly responding to any mention of his mother. Asked about Diana's, quote, presence in his life, he replied, "It's constant. It's been over the past 2 years, more so than ever before. It's almost as though she's done her bit for my brother, and now she's very much helping me. She got him set up, and now she's helping me set up." What the are you talking about? Your mother got your brother set up, and now inexplicably her spirit is dancing about you as she gets you set up. Son, let me tell you something. If this is how your mama set you up, she hated you. But Harry was kind of on a roll not making sense, honestly. In the same TV interview that he had done, where he said that everyone had failed his grandmother except for him, he inexplicably linked his mother to a plea for a, quote, more equal world. And finally, to put a cherry on top of all this stuff that didn't make sense, he volunteered that America was his, quote, home. But that was a direct contradiction of his recent submission to the High Court while appealing for special protection. Britain, his lawyer had told the judges, is and always will be his home, which is why he said he needed the police of England to protect him. So whatever he needs to say, that's not new. Within those few minutes on television, Harry had indicated the danger of his appearance at the Jubilee celebrations. Everything was about himself and Meghan. Disloyal to the royal family, the Sussexes cast doubt on whether they could be trusted. Really, they'd only been married for 4 years, but in those 4 years, they had transformed the royal family from a relatively harmonious group, embracing multiculturalism as part of their service to Britain and the Commonwealth, into a beleaguered institution uncertain of its future. Single-handedly, and for considerable financial gain, the Sussexes had tarnished the Queen's global reputation for unblemished decency. To their harshest critics, they had become agents of destruction. See, I have a problem with that statement, and it's twofold. My first problem is, Tom Bauer, you overestimate the power of Harry and Meghan. Because I would say that Harry and Meghan did tarnish the Queen's reputation for a time, but even as he wrote this book, he could have seen that we were pulling up out of the nosedive. I would have thought he could have predicted that. I think the other thing, too, is I know he overestimates Harry and Meghan But I also think he kind of overestimates how perfectly everyone saw the royal family up until this point. Because the royal family has had highs and lows, particularly since the 80s and, then in the 90s. I think that they had reached a very comfortable position, but to act as though there was a reputation of unblemished decency, yes, the Queen certainly had unblemished decency personally, but the family did not have a reputation of unblemished decency, and she had certainly been criticized for raising children who did not seem to understand her moral code. So I think that it's a little bit overkill on both sides there. Meghan never appeared to understand that the Queen was much more than a celebrity. She represented Britain's national identity and charitable values. The constitutional monarchy was the reason for Britain's historic liberties and stability while many neighboring European states had succumbed to dictatorships. Through every crisis, the Queen symbolized continuity to the Britons. Well, I do think that that is a true statement. Obviously, it is a true statement. And that's what I'm saying. I think that the Queen overall had a wonderful reputation for consistency and for charitable values. But all I'm saying is that to act as though Harry and Meghan were some kind of shocking dip from the moral high ground that the royal family had always trodden upon, I think that that's a little bit of a misstatement. I also think that I think that Edward VIII and Wallis Simpson were the beginning of a lot of emotional upheaval that was going to exist in the royal family. Because I think that it was that very well publicized failure that sort of kicked what seemed to be an even keel for the royal family. I think a domino effect had begun when that king decided that he would rather enjoy pleasure than responsibility. And I think that that code of behavior, that option that had been delivered through his behavior, kind of had a really rippling effect for many generations in the royal family. That, yes, he had gone well above and beyond what any of them would have considered, but it's an option to choose pleasure over responsibility. I think that the Queen was one of the first people and was consistently a member of the family who said, no, responsibility trumps my pleasure. But all around her were members of the family who wanted pleasure over responsibility. I think that's why she stood so brightly. Not because she upheld what was a consistent standard, but because she upheld the standard in an inconsistent environment. She was doing all that she could while every other member of the family seemed to do whatever they wanted. Her sister, doing whatever. Her children, doing whatever. Even her own husband, at times, seemed to be doing what he wanted to do. And so I think we respected her not because she was doing something that was expected of her, but because she was doing what was so unexpected by the others. Everyone else seemed to be able to choose pleasure over responsibility.